Hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boyce. I am Boyce and this is my podcast you are checking out. If you happen to be a very first time listener, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, established and emerging singers, songwriters, music journalists, and even music therapists. And on this gigantic jumbo-sized episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Alec Hanley Bemis. He is the label head of Brassland, a label he co-founded in 2001 with members of The National, Aaron and Bryce Dessner. Alec is celebrating the 20th anniversary of the label this year when it kicked off 2 decades ago with The National's debut. If you want to know what we talk about, I will tell you. You are going to learn about that label life, why he started the label, how he chooses artists for the label. Plus, you're going to get the Alec Hanley Bemis background story, including when he was a journalist and a critic. Also, he went to Yale. Since the interview, I have interviewed several Brassland artists, including Bartees Strange, Fusilier, Raphael Cohen's solo project, Las Palabras, and you're going to hear those in a very special 10-song Brassland playlist curated by Alec. That's right after the conversation. And instead of telling you all 10 artists, I figure you can just go to the show notes. It would be a lot to listen to me rattle off 10 names and song titles. But you're going to hear 3 from those artists that I interview. Plus, there is a Bryce Dessner track in there for you, too, right after the conversation. But before we get to it, I just wanted to explain that there was some weird acoustics in Alec's office, so you will notice that during the interview. Plus, this was a pre-COVID conversation, and how do you know that? How will you know that? Because we do not mention the pandemic at all. Here it is, without further ado, my conversation with Alec Hanley Bemis. Enjoy. As I'm listening to the Brassland, is it Brassland or Brassland?
Brassland.
Okay. Yeah, is it regional?
Yeah, we actually get we get grassland sometimes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm curious about your pronunciation.
Well, I said I'm from Pittsburgh. Maybe that's what Brassland. I'm thinking it's Brassland, but it's Brassland.
Whatever works, as long as you're not using an entirely different word. That's a challenge.
So don't say grassland.
Don't say grassland.
Okay.
Don't call it Brasslands, which is the name of a Balkan music documentary that someone in Brooklyn made at some point. Yeah, just
don't
Brassland.
say save the Brasslands, nothing like that.
No, and I oh god, and I also don't. I actually don't like us being called Brassland Records. I really prefer Brassland label or just Brassland, and I feel like I've become especially conscious about this as like the whole idea of a record. You know, like a collection of songs seems weird. It's more just about music, and culture, and a thing than specifically records. But
when did you feel that way? Because the record label's been around for
almost 20 years, 2001. Weirdly, from the beginning, but I feel like I've become more specific about it in recent years.
Yeah.
I remember, somewhat pretentiously writing like the Brassland label, and I just think of it as like a brand.
Okay.
And I'd say all of the people that have been involved think of it as well as a bit of a musical community, as well as just something that's trying to sign the biggest artist or another record or the biggest record.
Okay.
So
did you see it limiting in the beginning, and that you envisioned like things beyond records?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And then as things have kind of gone more digital and more song based, I just, there's going to be a point at which people aren't saying records. People are maybe going to say recordings.
Yeah.
But they're not going to say records in the same way, or it's going to start to seem nostalgic.
Okay.
Okay,
got it. So what I was going to ask is that as I listen to the music, the playlist, I don't really hear one sound.
Yep.
Which is a good thing.
Yep.
Do you have an aesthetic in your mind, or like when you're looking to sign somebody, is it about a feeling? Like, what is that?
I think there is some kind of aesthetic. I think it's again, a lot of what we do grows out of a community. Like I say about our label that unlike a lot of other labels, you could probably literally draw some kind of family tree, and every artist would connect to another artist pretty directly, either a producer or a player, or like this person was my neighbor or my sister found this and brought it to us. But I do think there's like some kind of aesthetic world, and that frankly is like a genreless aesthetic world, or one that crosses genres. So I kind of say like, you know, we have this band, This Is the Kid, who are kind of like a folk rock or psychedelic folk rock band. We have this band, Buke and Gase, who weirdly have been called everything from, what was it, steampunk folk to their newest music just sounds like electronic music. But I think all the artists really melt down the borders between genre. They could fit into many different things, and it's, you know, it's great. It's what I love in music. Yeah. You know.
Do you have to? So when you first hear something, because I imagine you get in a lot of submissions, right?
Yeah, but we do, and we have over the years. Like, do we ever listen to them? Yeah. I said no, like not really, unless it's recommended from another of the artists on the label directly. Let me let you finish your question. Do we get a lot of submissions, and what do you
get a lot of submissions, and in listening to those submissions, like, what do you need to hear, or what do you need to feel to say yes?
I mean, okay, here's one reason I don't like submissions, or I don't like, because I don't sit in front of my computer or sit in my house and go like, I'm going to listen to this demo, and this demo, and this demo. Honestly, it's just like, I try to live with music for a long time and see if I find myself going to it without it being in a queue of things I need to be listening to. Like, does this work in my life? Do people that I'm around ask, what is that? You know, like, so that's kind of the process. Like, if it weaves its way into my own DNA and the DNA of those around me, then we will consider.
Like, if I wasn't running a label, I would still listen
pretty much
to this music.
You know,
And do you have to balance between you liking it and, is this going to sell?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think traditionally we kind of, you know, I have some theory that like there is a community that this music will connect with, or a person this will connect with. We do try to work with generally new artists, and in this era, that means that you really are starting from scratch. You're starting from like 0 Facebook followers and 0 Instagram likes, and a lot of times these days, again, I'm listening for, could this end up in a TV show? Because I have contacts there. Could this end up on a Spotify playlist? Even if that's not why I like music, it's like, those are probably the economic opportunities that are most immediate. But a lot of times we sign things, frankly, where we think it's going to make some kind of income, or it's going to be around, it's going to persist for like 3 to 5 years. Like, we do not think like, what do we need as a seller in first quarter 2020? It's just not in our way of thinking. And strangely, it's really worked out for us. You know, the National being the most prominent example. Like, they literally had 0 going on when we put out their first record in 2001. And they had day jobs, and a bunch of them were in their 30s, and it did not seem like a hopeful situation. We actually had signed, our other first signing was this group Clogs, who were sort of an early proponent of a kind of movement that came out of, I guess it sort of came out of New York, called like alternative classical or post-classical. Back then in 2001, they were calling it kind of post-rock, the tendency. Like Godspeed You Black Emperor or Sigur Rós. And weirdly, like, that was the band that we thought, like, we could really do something with this. But not the National. I don't know, that guy's pretty old. Like, so yeah, I think, going with things, not having the selling potential too much in mind. There are things today where, like, I would have been excited to get, like, a 40-minute record or a 20-minute song in 2001 if it was done really well. These days, it'd be a cool thing to include on a record, but what you do with it to sell it is...
it's limited.
Yeah, it's limited and really challenging in the SoundCloud, in the Spotify world. Like, you know, a 2-minute song counts for the same amount of money, which is why a lot of pop songs are getting, and SoundCloud rap songs and stuff are getting shorter. So yeah, you know, I'm not insane, but I'd say punk is like punk-derived things. We've never really gone... You know, we have DIY and punk cultural things, but that's a genre that seems trickier these days, that I might avoid a little bit. But yeah.
So when you were starting with the Clogs and National, was that more just we're creating this opportunity to start a label, or you always wanted to do a label?
The original Brassland was actually a cassette label I had during college, and we kind of used the name. So, yeah, there was definitely some urge I had to start a label since high school. Yeah. And in high school, I was kind of like a zine person. I published this zine called Jaboni Youth.
What's it called?
Jaboni Youth, which is on the internet in some forms. Like, you can find a cover, but I'm pretty psyched it was on the pre-Google era, pre-internet era. But yeah, then it also was an opportunity. So the National and Clogs both have a Dessner brother in it. Clogs was really the group of Bryce Dessner, who's the guitar player for the National, or best known for that, and for his own composition, which frankly I think is maybe even more his identity than as a member of the National, and Aaron Dessner. And originally, actually, Bryce is now a major part of the National and has been for years, but for a long time, for the first record, certainly, Bryce is not even listed as an original member.
Oh, really?
I think he just was like, I played guitar on the National record, and sure, I'll go to shows when I have time.
Yeah. But he wasn't even thinking of it as the main thing.
I don't think so, no. And, but yeah, the opportunity was there. My two co-founders of the label, Bryce and Aaron. So, yeah, there was like opportunity to, they had two cool finished records. And they were up for like starting a label, whatever that meant. And I can't say we really had much of an understanding what the hell that meant in 2001. But, yeah.
How serious was the cassette label? You started that in college.
How serious is my current label? How serious is any label? Hopefully nothing. Hopefully it's all fun. But like, did anything go anywhere?
Or like, so how did the label start? Like, how long did you do
the cassette label?
Yeah, the cassette label.
Again, it is kind of a different entity. The cassette label. It kind of was an out. Was it an outgrowth of the zine? No, I think. Like literally, it was like high school band stuff. That's kind of how it started. I had a band. With a friend of mine named Mark in Yonkers. He was in Yonkers or Edgemont, Edgecliff. We were all Westchester kids, and there was a really cool record store that was very inspiring to us. And I think, frankly, like the cassette label existed mostly to put things in that record store. And they would have stuff by SST and Touch and Go and like a certain era, post Nirvana, like the labels that were cool. In a certain underground rock world. But then the sort of, in college, I kind of redubbed the label Brassland. And again, we would sell maybe 100 of something. I'm trying to, I can't remember if that's conservative or a liberal estimate, but it was interesting in that, you've heard of Bright Eyes or Connor Oberst. Like, I do remember trading tapes with a couple of people like that. There's actually a guy that does a lot of graphic design for Animal Collective named Rob Carmichael that had a tape label that I would trade stuff with. This fellow Brandon Stossy, who you've interviewed in the past and has been at Pitchfork and now has a site called The Creative Independent as a manager. He's someone that I sort of interacted with, and so it was serious in that there were definitely people around that had ambitions for their cultural production. Beyond, their high school. But, or their college. But yeah, there wasn't like a real huge audience. Yeah.
So was it just a way to get further delving into a music scene? To be a part as opposed to just listening or? Yeah.
V1, cultural production. I mean, I think outgrowth of being a zine person. And I think for the first 7 years of Brassland, I was actually also a journalist. I guess if I was being pretentious, I'd say like I was a cultural critic. If I was not, I'd say like a music writer. Although I wrote about backyard wrestling and video games and things that were not music. I wasn't just doing profiles of famous people or reviews. But definitely the idea of being in a label was like, being a journalist, you go deep on something and then you kind of disappear and you're on to the next one. And I like the idea of a label really fostering artists and a community and a larger awareness and a project that you're going to work on for 5 or 10 or 20 years. So I think the desire to go deeper was really what starting the label came out of. Okay.
Did you? What did you go to school for?
My major was history, American history, and I think I did a thesis on this newspaper called the East Village Other. It was like an underground newspaper from New York, which were kind of, I don't know if I'd call them proto-zines, maybe proto-internet, proto, like places you could get weird, esoteric, specific information for underground culture. Definitely, I guess it came after the Village Voice, but, it's somewhat like the Village Voice, weekly newspapers. But I also spent a lot of time in college writing and doing photography and kind of in the arts, quote unquote. I think I did not come from a background where I felt safe majoring in an arts subject. That did not seem like a great idea.
But the American history felt a little...
Yeah, that was my bet. And I like, my thing was like, I get to read cool books and then kind of put them in some historical context. So it was an art major. It was just like an art history-ish.
What were you going to do with that?
I had no idea what I was going to do with that. Well, at least there's like reading or writing, or you could become a lawyer or whatever. Pure expression did not seem like it was allowed or financially viable.
You were thinking about being a lawyer?
No. Okay. Definitely not. I mean, actually, lawyering is definitely something, or like lawyerly thinking and contracts are something you actually have to think a fair amount about with a label. But yeah, I think I would not be a happy person, nor would I would think I'd be a bit of a scourge on humanity if I was a lawyer, because I'm pretty stubborn, and you probably don't want those qualities together. But yeah, label, in some ways, and I don't know how many labels you've talked to or what they've talked about. The funny thing about it is I'm probably most interested in interacting with artists and like supporting and encouraging, and then finding a community and audience for those artists. But a lot of the work of a label really is like accounting and legal, and I'd say like a shocking amount is accounting. Like it's, and if someone had told me that, I might have been more reluctant about starting one. But hey.
So what happens there? Where'd you go to school?
I went to Yale University. Fancy. I guess I'm supposed to like foreground that or have a tattoo or something.
I feel like you buried the lead on that.
Yeah, well, that's a lead. I mean, whatever. I'm not embarrassed. It was an amazing place. Actually, Bryce from the National, I met him there. And there's a person that runs this amazing club in LA that started in Brooklyn called Zebulon. My friend Mia Doitad, she's someone I met at Yale. For a while, I was a label manager for Bang on a Can's label, this kind of New York new music organization, and all of them met at like the Yale School of Music. So it's Dave Longstreth. I briefly managed Dirty Projectors, or briefly maybe 2 years, and he went to Yale, and a couple years after I did. So it's definitely actually weirdly been an important community to me. But when you're there, the interesting thing, and maybe it's kind of like trial by fire, like people that go to Yale want to become president, or like, go to Wall Street, or, they want to do bigger things than be in music. So that resistance was, I think, an interesting and maybe informative thing.
Why did you go?
Who knows? I don't know. My life before age like 19 or 20 is like why I made the decisions I made are somewhat mysterious to me. I mean, I was definitely interested in theater, and they were good at that, and I knew about that. It's something I abandoned by sophomore year. I was actually in an improv comedy group, weirdly, freshman and sophomore year, and then I quit to kind of be, quote unquote, become a writer. And then I was doing the zine and music stuff all around that, but I've always been a non-musician, so that was never really a thing for me. Did it matter? I should get my mom. We should patch her into this call. Hey, Mom, why did I go to Yale? What the hell was I thinking? Sorry about those bills. Damn.
Well, is it one of those things like you say Yale and like everyone will support you that you're going to Yale? Like no one says like, oh God, what are you thinking going to Yale?
That's true. Yeah, and I was a little bit. My head was that person maybe a little bit more back then, that I cared about that kind of thing. I still probably would have. I have a friend that was he's the former director of Duke University's sort of presenting, like arts presenter, like the Brooklyn Academy of Music of Duke, if that makes any sense. And he said that, like, I think he went to some fancy college, but he's like, in America, where theoretically we're all equal, although we're not all equal, and that's becoming clear in an awesome way to have that clarified now. But like, you go to those places, and it is like it's a credential, like that because we don't have royalty here. We do have wealth. We have too much wealth, and that's like a crazy thing that we're grappling with now in America, I think. But kind of like, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Good, bad, I won't put that word on it. It's certainly interesting. It's something I maybe wanted to participate in at that time.
So your overall experience, what was that like?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. It was good. I met people that I'm still in touch with today and still work with today, and that's maybe the most you can ask for.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So after you graduate, are you going right into the writing career?
I traveled like a little bit that summer. I used, I like went to Europe with some friends just to see like stuff. Because I'd never really been, and I did I know back then that I would want to do something that was like sort of global? Like I think with the label, it's funny. Like Clogs, actually, the other main person is from Australia, and he actually went to Yale School of Music as a kind of older student. He was already in his mid-30s, late 30s, 40s when Clogs started. But we started with this international thing. Let me get back to your question. Moved to LA. Probably by the fall after college. Maybe it was, I graduated in 98. Maybe it was January 99 that I moved to Los Angeles. And it was honestly because that friend that I mentioned, Mia Doitad, who is a musician, was a musician, and co-owns Zebulon now. Her father was a sculptor and had this like warehouse space on the LA River. And I was like, cheap rent, cool. Music industry, LA, cool. And somehow I think I actually wanted to get in the music industry.
Okay. So you knew that.
Yeah. But it was pre-Napster by a couple of years, but definitely there had been some kind of, I think there was like a merger that took place where like a lot of people lost their jobs at the same time. So that route didn't seem possible. And I literally sent in some clips to an editor at a weekly newspaper called The New Times. I don't know if that chain even exists anymore, but it was like a Village Voice competitor. And someone picked my clips off the slush pile and called and said, like, we want you to do stuff. And a similar thing happened at the, I later, probably my most prominent writing stint, although I wrote once for The New Yorker. I did a review for them of a Beck record, and I wrote a bunch of articles for The New York Times, but LA Weekly was really my solid outlet, and they picked me off the slush pile too, which is crazy. Yeah. And I ended up writing a big profile on Elliott Smith, which was...
On who?
Elliott Smith.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which was like...
That was not... Okay, because when did he die?
He died, and that was probably like... It was 99. I think it was pre 9/11 that I did my Elliott Smith thing. Maybe it was 99, 2000 or something like that. It was right... It was... I want to say it was like the year after he was on the Oscars next to Celine Dion. For the unlikely Best Song nominee for Good Will Hunting. Yeah, but it was sad, that whole...
Yeah. What was your impression of him when you interviewed him?
There seemed to be maybe some alcohol issues. Like, just, subtle around the edges. Yeah. And I can't remember if that was even like a public thing, that he was having troubles. Soft. Someone that didn't want to be famous, really, and didn't necessarily want to present themselves. I'd say that, not necessarily that experience, but a lot of the experience of interviewing artists back then was definitely an informative thing. Because I think I would go for somewhat extreme personalities. I did a long article once on Kool Keith. Okay. Do you know who he is? Yeah, like spent a day and a half or something with him. Definitely left an impression. You're just like, wow, man, you live in your own world, and it is genius and not easy to live in, and very much your own. If people don't know, I mean, he's worth a Google, and at the time, I think he was coming off Dr. Octagon, this kind of big comeback album, and he got signed to Columbia. major label. But yeah, like rapper that's like half scatological, half about. Back then, his thing was like outer space. Mm-hmm. He was really into it.
Yeah,
and like this whole persona. Although he had been debuting this Black Elvis persona,
yeah, I remember that.
Which was like this whole other like I don't understand how any of these things connect, but it was like Sun Ra level. You have invented your own world, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. What do you think is about the artists in the extremes that you like? You want to discover why they're that way?
No, I mean, I think I want an artist that like builds a world. I mean, I like great songs, and great songs are what make the whole music industry go round. I think, especially in the Spotify era, you know, like you can have one song that has 100 million plays, and your next biggest song has 7 million.
Yeah.
Like that song is bigger than you. But as a person, I mean, you know, I'm sort of interested in the like 5 to 20 year arc or longer of someone's creativity and having a big persona and a big universe that you have in your own head that you're trying to get out there allows for those longer careers in a way that, you know, the more craftsman-like skills of like, you shred a guitar, you are, you know, a tight drummer, you know how to craft a top-line melody that people will remember in a way that those things don't persist or might lose relevance or whatever. You know, I'm interested in Lil Nas X, and I'm kind of obsessed with Old Town Road, but he's a big persona, sort of, but like, you know, that's not the kind of big persona I'm interested in, to be clear. It's like, it's not just someone that's like shocking or dramatic, it's like fully imagined is really the thing I'm kind of going for.
Okay. And what do you, like, what kind of journalist were you going into there? Are you looking, like, what do you want to give to the reader, or what do you want to discover for yourself? Did you have, like, a game plan? Or
no, I think I had much less of a game plan. I mean, it's a reason I'm not a journalist.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I'm occasionally tempted to write, or I get offered to write things, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. I'm very verbal, and I think it was just, like, honestly, like, not path of least resistance, because trying to write is not. I mean, you're a writer as well.
Yeah.
It's not. Some people are really fluid at it, but I'm not. Or I'm fluid at writing and generating. I'm not really fluid at editing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Did you like the pre-writing part, like talking to the artists, following them?
Yeah, probably more. And like again, like seeing that world and seeing, and I felt like. I don't know. I feel like I am of use to like. I think the first line in my either Twitter bio or some social media bio is like I help artists, and I do feel like clarifying someone's thoughts about something or being a really good interlocutor, like wall to bounce an idea off of. I think that's what I'm good at, and I think I like that back then. Although I think I probably was less comfortable around musicians back then. I think it was always a funny thing. You know, I was really around when Pitchfork was sort of launching, and you would meet all these like Pitchfork artists, and you're like, wow, you have like a really hard time talking to people. I think it's very different now, like the staff and the culture around it. But when they hired my friend Brandon, I was like, wow, the best thing about this hire, other than that Brandon had this amazing run of like talent spotter thing, like, you know, I think he pulled like Sufjan Stevens, one of his records off the pile. I was like, this is really great. We should do something with this. Was that Brandon kind of knew how to hang and talk to musicians in a really good way. And I was like okay at it. But I think I've gotten now pretty good at it.
Yeah. And this is sort of simultaneously with you doing Brassland?
Yeah. I mean, so Brassland started in 2001. I think I stopped writing by 2008. I'd probably have to like, you know, use Google to figure out my own history. You know, like, and even I think actually my last like serious article, like I did a cover story. It was a big story for the LA Times Magazine. They were trying to like launch a New York Times Magazine competitor, and I did a Freak Folk article that I think was okay. I think I'd still read it and like it. It was like Devendra Banhart, Sufjan Stevens, Iron and Wine, Joanna Newsom. That was 2005. And I think I continued to do things after that, but like knowing that was not where my future lay. I think I actually even had a column at the LA Weekly after that, but it was like, I can do this in like 2 days at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Running my label.
So your heart just was no longer in it and more so in the label?
Yeah, and I could see the economic crash coming in journalism. And I was definitely like, the history I came from was like long form journalism, which I think has actually experienced a resurgence now. But I could see with the internet, I think Gawker was sort of starting to come up. And I'm like, I want nothing. I'm entertained by this, but I want nothing to do with it as a writer. And it was before really podcasting. Like podcasting, frankly, I think is maybe one of the most writerly things you can do on the internet right now, and that you can kind of be discursive and talk about ideas and not be reduced to a pull quote or a tweet.
Others will do that for you later.
So yeah, like, there was definitely something where like the label was getting more and more exciting, and watching the national grow was like, oh wow, this is actually possible. I'd say their real breakthrough moment was like maybe 2008, 2009. They had left the label a couple years before. Although, I even helped with that transition. Like, their first manager was, and their longtime manager was a publicist that I'd interacted with as a journalist. And she had been starting to pick up bands, and I introduced them, and it went really well.
Yeah.
They did really great things for one another for a long time.
Because the transition is more just like, there was only so far you could take them.
Yeah. I mean, and like, that's another difference, I think, with Brassland. Like, we're really good. We could become a lifelong label for sort of quirkier, left of center, cult following things, or even like, frankly, like anything in classical music, or contemporary music. Like, I think we might be as good a home as almost anybody because the market's just different. But something that needs a global push, that's not what we're doing. Like, we actually had I'm trying to think if there are. One of our, top 5 bands in the history of the label is this band, This Is the Kit, whose biggest record for the label was produced by Aaron from The National. And I literally, I think my partners actually wanted to keep it on Brassland, and I don't think Kate Stables, who's the front person at This Is the Kit, felt a particular burning ambition to leave. Yeah. But I had a friend that was working at Rough Trade Records, and I'm like, no, she has to hear this, and this would be good for this band to be on a bigger label. And literally, that's who they ended up signing with for future records. I'd see us as part of a continuum. And these days, honestly, like most of the bigger indie labels, they use smaller labels as a feeder system. Really, it's
Do you have a problem with that?
I have a problem when they don't. There was actually like a little tweet storm by this publicist named Judy Miller, who runs a company called Motormouth. And she was big in the. I don't know if she'd be angry at me if I called it, if I said it was blog rock, but Animal Collective, Bon Iver, like that's, I think she was Aphex Twins, longtime publicist. She does a certain thing. Actually, she's also Sharon Jones, and she was like, it's not going to be tweet length, but effectively it was like pet peeve. Huge indie labels who like floss like they're, just discovered some talent where really they just took it from the indie label, that really built the career. And I don't love that. And that can be common. Not because anyone's a bad person or any labels are problematic insofar that is the culture of the music industry is hyping and like, weird flex. As the kids might say, or whatever.
Did your the writing career and working with artists in that way, did that play a part in running a label?
I think artists need a story and a narrative, and now more than ever to like sort of stick out. What is it? I can't remember if it's 40,000 tracks released every week.
Is that what it is?
It's insane. Yeah. It's insane, and if any month, like if you said 40,000 tracks a year, you'd be stressed out. But so like a narrative is helpful and the story is helpful. And in the digital era, it is like, it's not all about the release date of the album or even the single. It's like, ooh, my favorite artist put out a new picture that I'm noticing, or a new look or a new vibe, and that got my attention. We're living in the full-on attention economy. So I would think that some of the tools that I learned, as a journalist, like to make things sticky or readable or engaging, apply.
Okay. Yeah. And how have you seen Brassland evolve over the years? from where you started to where
it's
you're
grown
now?
consistently. Every year gets... it's been actually... I'd say we're flat the last maybe 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's grown. The arc is towards growth.
Yeah.
And nothing seems to stop that. Spotify helps. I think at the same time, I don't want it to grow into a sort of corporate thing. Like, I like it as this sort of artist development brand, community. Trying to think, what was the original question?
How has it evolved or grown? Or
how has it evolved?
How is it different from?
I mean, it's real now. Is any artistic thing real until it goes into the world and you see if it, is going to grow or just sort of like stay a seedling? I don't know. It's real.
Yeah.
Like, people really like it. We have a bunch of artists that are, that whether it's 50 or 50,000 people might say, like, that's my favorite artist, and that's amazing. And connected to that, like, we've been like a viable source of income for artists in recent years. For a small handful of artists, like a main source of income. Whether their parent would go or like some loved one would go, like, you should probably have another job as well. Actually, this is actually a point I'd like to make about the label. I think we definitely specialize in kind of lifer musicians. Like, any artist that wants to be a next big thing, and if they don't become the next big thing, they're going to go become an actor or something like that. Yeah. Like, those we don't go for. We really go for people that are like... So a lot of artists, do have other projects and things that they do, usually within the realm of music. There's this person, Thomas Bartlett, otherwise known as Dove Man, on the records that we've done. And, he's produced Nora Jones records and was a main collaborator with Annie Clark, St. Vincent, on her last record. And also plays in a group called The Gloaming, which is sort of like an Irish fusion post-rock group that has now done better than any of the original Dove Man records that we kind of signed him for have done. So we sign artists that, like, a lot of what Brassland does is one part of their larger artistic or creative life, and we really like that as a characteristic. And maybe this brings me back to the sort of demo pile question. Like, if I see that someone's almost working, living, acting as an artist even before they have an audience, like in this full-on way, that's usually a positive sign.
That's kind of like what I'm looking for, like, with interviews, that they're actually doing it.
It's like, give you the license to do these things. It's not...
Whether the money's there or not, or
what level the money is, or whether it comes and goes. Like, you have to want to live that lifestyle. I mean, I've managed artists, as I sort of mentioned. I managed Dirty Projectors for a little bit. I managed this band Chick Chick Chick, 3 exclamation marks, for a little bit. I managed for a longer period of time this singer-songwriter named Alexi Murdoch. And I actually co-managed him with a friend, and that friend at one point said to me, his name's Dalton Sim, great manager, looks after Father John Misty and Dispatch, and looked after Fun. And he was like, one thing I look for in the bands I want to work with is, like, do they actually want to work? Do they want to do this? Do they want to tour? Do they want to make records? Do they want to be in a room with one another? And those are always, like, those are the signs that you want to stay away from. And the situations when an artist gets there, you want to, sometimes it's just taking your foot off the accelerator. It's like, okay, you've toured for 3 months. Maybe you guys need to spend some time away from each other for 2 months. Or 4 months. Or whatever you need.
Come back fresh.
Like, it's intense.
Is that a conversation that's being held before contracts are signed? Or are you just kind of intuit this?
I mean, we've never spent, like, a crazy amount of money on an artist before they were worth the money. Before they had some kind of track record. So, we can make a small investment in an artist just because we love the music and the thing and believe in it and it's interesting. But you try to hang out with someone more than once.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I signed one artist, this band called The Devastations, this Australian kind of band, based just on the record and maybe talking to them. They ended up touring America. They ended up actually signing the Beggars through through the same A&R person that had signed the National. And that didn't work out. But would I say that I wouldn't repeat that? I don't know. But generally you want to meet someone, you want to see them play, you want to know what they're like in the world, what the vibe is.
What is your favorite part of all this, of running a label?
Creative development. With artists. Being some kind of... Again, I'm not egotistical enough to put, creative director on a business card, but that interaction is really valuable. That's probably the most enjoyable. But then I like how it balances out against other things. I like it that's not in a vacuum, and then I see we thought it was this single, but this is the single that took off, and that had nothing to do with what we thought. Other favorite parts of the job, like getting a first sync license. This sort of more emerging artist we've been working with the last couple of years named Fusilier. Again, it'll come out by the time this, pods or airs or however you say it, but we just got a track of his in a Netflix show.
Nice.
This is his first sync license, and I don't know if it's going to be prominent enough that it'll even give him a bounce culturally. But certainly when the money comes through, that's going to be a big moment. It's probably the most money he'll have ever earned from his music, and that's awesome. And I really appreciate those things. Like writing an artist a royalty check is cool.
It's cool, dude. Anything I leave out?
I'm sure.
That you're dying to say?
But you probably got more than I expected, I would say. So, and went to corners I didn't expect. So, no.
Oh, that's good.
No final notes.
Best place for people to check out Brassland, you?
We're at Brassland, Brassland, on all the social networks, by which I mean, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Instagram's the one that's most active. We've even had people... I've had literally devoted employees doing Twitter in the past. It doesn't seem as necessary now. You can find me at my full name, Alec Hanley Bemis. I'm sure that'll be spelled somewhere here. And I'm active-ish. I'm more of a retweeter than a tweeter. But I'm on Instagram too, and I guess that's a thing. Brassland.org. We still, I guess, believe in websites. I'm not revising our website. It's mobile friendly, but I'm not revising it that it's just 3 pictures that you can scroll through. So there's actually a ton of history and written material on the label. We've actually done events. That's an element of the label that's maybe worth mentioning. We've done sort of live events at the Adelaide Festival in Australia and this concert hall in Dublin called the National Concert Hall of Ireland, which is a really prestigious thing. We did a smaller presentation once. It's called the Haldern Pop Festival in Germany, although it's right on the border of the Netherlands. Recently, we've kind of put a bunch of the information about those events up there. We've also done residencies. I did a residency once with 2 bands we were considering signing at this place called Denniston Hill in upstate New York that's owned by a painter, a very famous painter named Julie Meritu, and a great kind of multi-disciplinary artist named Paul Pfeiffer.
Okay. It's all good
bigger
stuff.
Than a label, and that information's there, and it'd be cool for people to discover that.
Okay, and they should.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alec. This was wonderful. I enjoyed this.
Thank you, boys.
Sure.
Cocodrilo, 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 Just E un vecchio olivo.
to get it in my head. I wanna know the secret, where you been hiding. Yeah, 'cause I'm trying. Oh, the road you know seems like you're going it alone, and you keep tripping over stone.
side. Gonna walk her right on inside and order a drink. Gonna get a vodka soda. Gonna get a vodka soda. Gonna get a vodka soda with a lime, with a lime. Gonna get a vodka soda. Gonna get a vodka soda. Gonna get a vodka soda with a lime, with a lime, with a lime. You push, I'll go. 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 I'll go. I'll go. I'll go. You feel good about yourself cause you think that this girl is looking at you while you dance to the beat. She may not be looking at you, but that's okay cause you're having a drink and you're feeling alright and you're kinda sober even though you're high. At the same time, gonna walk right to this girl. Gonna walk right to this girl. Gonna walk right to this girl and give her my number. And maybe she'll call me back. And maybe she won't.
Maybe I'll call back.
Maybe she'll call me back.
Maybe I'll call back.
Maybe she'll call me back.
Maybe I'll call back.
Maybe she'll call me back.
Maybe I'll call back.
Maybe she'll call me back. You push, I'll go. 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 I'll go. I'll go. I'll go. Then you look toward the subway. You look toward the subway. You look toward the subway and you're going home and you're going home and you're going home and you're glad that you have a home. 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 Laying in your bed, laying in your bed, laying in your bed. You think in your head, if this is life, it ain't so bad. If this is life, it ain't so bad. You push, I'll go. 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 I'll go. I'll go. I'll go. You push, 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 I'll go.
estaba caminando por esa ciudad donde yo nací, cuando vi a un tipo caminando que era igual a mí. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. Él iba regresando a su casa, acabó de trabajar. No creo que él notó que yo estaba ahí, fue solo el azar. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. Iba a su dirección y yo con mi canción. No era conspiración. En esa ciudad los dos la misma edad, va bien la realidad. No hay prueba que me puede confirmar la foto creada en la imaginación. A pesar de todo, no hay prueba que me puede confirmar la foto creada en la imaginación. A pesar de todo, quién sabe qué estuviera haciendo si no me hubiera salido de aquel lugar. Y no hay por qué pensar, quién sabe qué estuviera haciendo si no me hubiera salido de aquel lugar. Y no hay por qué pensar. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. Y va a su dirección y yo con mi canción. No era conspiración. Cada decisión en cada situación tiene una reacción. En esa ciudad los dos la misma edad, va bien la realidad. Cada situación tiene una reacción. Cada decisión.
Sometimes I hold you just to make you stay, or to shield you from what I could say. But the way I feel, slow down, falling fast, slow down, slow down. Sometimes I wonder what you see in me. Do we make summer or have a stormy spring? What's in your heart? Tell me, is it love? Tell me, hey. That I'm not alone by myself, cause I'm head over heels to control yourself. Show me that you're lost and need my help in this love. Now I see you in my fantasy. You meet at the Oscars, film about our history.
can see right through you. Delicate, delicate, in the web translucent. Steady on, steady on, sturdy up and fly right. And all I know, cross the border in a fortnight. And if I die before I'm new, well, I can see right through you. Delicate, delicate, and in one word I know you. You live in my
And there you have it, the Brassland playlist curated by my guest Alec, Hanley, Bemis. I hope you enjoyed the music. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And don't forget, I will put all of the artist information in the show notes for you. If you would like more information on this podcast, please head on over to talkmusictalk.com for more podcast information and to stream every single episode. You can also find me on Instagram at This Is Boys, so please follow me there. Some special requests for you. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Audible. Plus, if you are on a Galaxy phone, you can find the podcast on Samsung Free. Just search for Talk Music Talk with Boys. Wherever you happen to listen, please leave a 5-star rating and or review to help expose the podcast to brand new listeners. There is also a free app. You can download it wherever you like to get your apps. Again, just search for Talk Music Talk with Boys. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time. This one's for you, Liz.